Well, g'day, flatties and globe defenders. It's Critical Thing from Down Under.
Well, hello again, and here I am back with a third instalment on the JTolan Media1 measures the radius of the Earth and gets it wrong. I know this content is a little bit tedious, boring, pretty uninteresting really. But I feel it's important to actually deconstruct and debunk these kinds of videos from JTolan Media1 because the flatties don't have the skills to do it themselves. Not that they'll take any notice of that, but I think it's essential to actually put it out there. Now, it does take a lot of work to pull these videos apart, work out what the flatty is trying to say, and then stitching it all back together with the correct numbers. Now, I go to all this trouble. A lot of the flatties won't even watch it, which is a shame. But I do get a comment like this from the plain truth. So this is the most that the plain truth could offer on the subject. Now, I did question him a little bit about, you still have nothing at all to address the very real critical errors I have pointed out. So, do you want to maintain this dishonesty? And his reply is there. I haven't even watched it. So, the plain truth is not interested in finding out the truth about anything, really. I mean, if you haven't watched it, how is that interested in finding about the truth? I mean, the plain truth wants to have a collaboration with JTolan Media1. I mean, if somebody says, hey, JTolan Media1 is made a mistake, if I was having a collaboration with someone like that, I'd want to have a look and know what the mistake is. I'd want to know if who I'm collaborating with knows what they're talking about. But no, it doesn't matter to the flatties. No, doesn't matter. As long as the answer's flat. They pretend to want to know the truth, but really they don't. Anyway, let's carry on with this. Now, in my first video, I showed how this particular spreadsheet has a mistake in it. And in fact, when you correct the mistake, JTolan Media1 has calculated the correct radius of the Earth by his observations. In my second video, I showed how this particular diagram or picture, whatever, is also completely wrong, and he's introduced a second mistake there where he's miscalculated by a factor of 2 the curvature drop that the globe model predicts. Now, I haven't touched on this one, but I'll mention this one briefly. This is a very deceptive graphic, and what goes with it is very deceptive. In this diagram on the lower left, you can see that there's no scale. So we don't know how high that is, and there's no temperature scale, no height scale. So it's pretty useless really. But it's fair to say that these kinds of gradients only occur close to the surface, and you will hear JTolan Media himself admit that in this little clip.
Well, in the inset I have some temperature gradient profiles there, and looking closely at what happens close to the ground, there's a stronger gradient there on a hotter day.
This is in total contrast to what he said in an earlier video.
This location by the aqueduct is perfect because it is a flat level surface, and also because we are high above the desert floor, so we're not sighting through the turbulent air due to heat gradients, temperature gradients above the desert floor.
So at that time he was saying how the temperature gradient close to the surface was not affected by his elevation. But now, in his latest video, he switched that around and reversed that and says now the temperature gradient does affect it, even though he said that the temperature gradient only applies there close to the surface. So he's contradicted himself there, because he couldn't use the previous excuses and data, because he has in fact proved the globe this time and has to come up with some new stuff. This diagram is also deceptive in the fact that he's made the globe look like the globe and the flat earth are on equal footing here, which is not the case. I've drawn a green line in there which is closer to where the globe prediction is. You can see it's much closer to the observed than the flat earth prediction. So there, that diagram is, as I said, deceptively wrong. Now we get to the final part of JTolan Media1's video, and it hinges around this kind of graph, which he describes as like measuring the gravity vector. Now I have to disagree with that. It measures the gradient of that particular set of measurements. It's a pretty useless measurement. If you want to measure the gravity vector, you should do it the proper way by doing reciprocal zenith readings. Now you have the equipment, you have a proper theodolite, you can do that. But this sighting a long distance is not a great way of doing this. And this graph here, it's very hard to explain why it's invalid, but it is invalid because the origin is actually multiple origins. He's just taken the slope from a particular point, but these slopes are in fact different points in height, different points along the curve, so it doesn't really help much. Also, he's retained this incorrect calculation of the globe prediction. It's way up there, but that's actually twice as big. So I'll bring up my spreadsheet. Now I've duplicated his numbers here, most of them. Thing to note, there's an extra data set in here that wasn't in the first part of the video. I don't know where that data comes from, but I've also included it here. And the other thing to note here is there's another mistake in the data. Now, he was supposed to take the measurements to the equal elevation point, but he's actually used the raw measurements, which is actually 82 feet above his elevation point. So I've just copied that at the moment for the purpose of this exercise of showing where he's gone wrong. In terms of the globe prediction, then that had to be corrected in two ways. The first way was it was twice as big as it should be. So this column here, D, is 2 times the real value. This column E is the real values, but then it has to be adjusted for the 82 feet that these readings are pointing at a point 82 feet above that. So I've made that adjustment, and here you can see the corrected graph. Now you must still remember that this is an invalid comparison. You're comparing apples with oranges, but I'm just going to show how it is when we first of all correct that mistake with the globe prediction. And you can already see that the globe prediction is not too far away. Now we can increase that refraction. We said it was 1.11 on the day, and you see the globe prediction is pretty much smack in the middle of those values there. But as I said before, this is not a very useful graph because this origin point here is adjusted according to each curve that you're trying to fit to. But it's a little bit complicated, but I'll put that back to 1.14 standard refraction, and you see we're still in the right area. But it doesn't move much because, like I said, it's the way that the graph is built. So I put it back to where it was. The other thing too is that the flat Earth prediction is not on that graph. And if we were to put the flat Earth prediction on there, because this point is 82 feet above the elevation of where the observation is taken, the flat Earth angle would get less and less. The slope would be negative. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on that particular graph because I want to show one that's normalized, that is a little bit more correct in how we compare the gradients of those curves. Now on this one, rather than subtract a variable amount to have them all line up at the origin, I've subtracted just a common origin for them all. So you see some curves are higher than others, and in fact the prediction is higher than all the observations. This is to be expected because all the observations are working under refractive conditions where the geometric prediction has no refraction, so it's up there on its own, and all the observations are clustered around this area here, which is a pretty good result really. Now if we put in our refractive index of 1.11, then you can see that the globe prediction with a refractive index of 1.11 matches very nicely. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't make any conclusion about that there's anything invalid. It fits the globe very well. Now to make this even more stark, the difference between the flat Earth and the globe, I've extended the graph back. When you're 0 kilometers away or 0 miles away, then there will be no drop. And if you look at the bottom line there, the flat Earth, because it's at the same elevation, no matter how far away you go, the flat Earth predicted value is right there on the ground, still at the same 0 degrees. No change. Now the observed was these lines here, and the globe predicted is that line there. So it's pretty easy to see that these observations match very closely the globe. And if we put our index of refraction in there, you can see you can't tell the difference. It fits the globe very well. If we just go back to this one, and so we're going to normalize just that section where the observation is and include the flat Earth, and it looks something like that. And this is how you compare the gradients, and the flat Earth is down here, and the globe, the flat Earth is actually negative. It will be negative angles. The globe is up there, the globe prediction, the observations are there, 1.11, and there, that matches the globe with a standard, slightly less than standard refraction. You got no hope of getting that flat Earth refracted up to there. That's impossible, as mentioned in my last video. There's a few more things about this that need to be looked at. So the last time he tried to do this gravity, what he calls gravity vector thing, he strapped an inclinometer to his telescope, and this is what he said about the results.
So there you have it, folks. There is no divergence in the gravity vector.
So when he tried it the last time, there was no divergence in the gravity vector. But unfortunately, this time, plenty of divergence in the gravity vector. So he has to come up with a new excuse, a new angle, because he's just proved the globe. And now he's going to pretend that that last video never happened, I guess. He's never going to admit that that was wrong. One of them is wrong. They can't be both right. So he's come up with these theory about temperatures affecting the refraction and the radius. And while I agree that there may be some correlation, I'm going to argue that in this case, the correlation doesn't exist. Now, I've checked the temperatures from the records from Palmdale in California, and I've come up with some different numbers. And I've put my numbers there. These are the numbers that I come up with. There's 85, 75, 70, 75, 75, and I don't really know what this one is for this data set because there's no date or anything. So as you can see, there's no real correlation between temperature and that gradient there on those observations. So we can fairly easily discount that. All this trouble that JT has gone to do these temperature gradients and display them in a deceptive and incorrect manner, he's ignoring the elephant in the room. So you can see that, look at this, how far away we are from the flat Earth. And this is how close we are on the globe and how far away we are on the flat Earth. So all this looking at these gradients up here, it's just a bit of a smoke screen. It's trying to divert your attention away from the elephant in the room there, which is the observations don't fit a flat Earth, and they do fit a globe with a small amount of expected refraction. So what are you going to do now? The plain truth's not interested in this. He probably couldn't understand it anyway. JTolan Media1, you've proved the globe. What are you going to do? Are you going to fix this? Or are you going to just carry on and do the usual flat Earth intellectually dishonest thing and just pretend your mistakes never happened?